School expels teen over outfit, regrets it when dad steps in. Her father sat in stunned silence when he finally heard the real reason why his daughter was kicked out of school, and he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He listened to them for a few minutes as they badmouthed his daughter. He'd finally heard enough and decided that it was time to get ready to fight. A successful investment banker and real estate mogul, Tony Alarcon, wasn't about to sit still. His daughter's school was saying some terrible things about his daughter. She was sitting there in tears, and he knew that he had to make things right. Demetra, Tony's daughter, was humiliated by how she was being singled out and bullied that day. While she wasn't the only teen to be in this situation, it didn't make it any less humiliating for her to endure that. She hadn't seen anything wrong with the outfit that she was wearing. However, her school decided to kick her out. Schools all have different dress code rules, and Demetra's school didn't have a uniform that students were expected to wear. The only condition was that their outfits had to be modest. She never expected the cute outfit that she picked that morning would not only get her kicked out, but would also start a fight between her father and the school. The outfit she chose that day became a huge issue overnight. It wasn't long before she was in the middle of a media frenzy. Her clothes weren't any different from any other girl her age, so what was the problem? What she didn't know was that something worse was yet to come. It was 90 degrees on the day that Demetra chose to wear a blue romper to Raymond J. Fisher Middle School in Los Gatos, California. She chose the outfit to be comfortable, but she never thought it would cause such an uproar. During the first period, her teacher called her out. However, her headmaster made one mistake. He called her father. Tony was given two choices by her principal. Tony could either fetch Demetra from school and take her home immediately, or he could bring her a change of clothes. Tony, however, couldn't believe his ears. He hadn't seen anything wrong with her outfit that day. After all, he'd taken her to school. Tony was furious but brought her a change of clothes. He went through her drawers to find something he felt was okay for her to wear. When he arrived back at the school, he found her standing outside the gate crying. Things were far from over. In fact, they had just begun. After she had changed out of the romper and into the clothes that her father had chosen, they were told once again that her outfit was inappropriate. Tony was livid. He took the administrator to task on the spot. He tried to find out what the problem was, even going so far as to make her bend over to prove nothing is exposed. The answer he received from the school administrator didn't satisfy Tony. He told them that he wanted the real reason why she was being picked on. Tony had grown suspicious and had an inkling as to what might really be going on, but he didn't want to believe it. He thought he was ready for the truth, but it still caught him off guard when they admitted it at last. The school administrator claimed that the so-called violation wasn't an issue of modesty, but rather an issue of length. He stated that neither the romper nor the denim shorts Tony had chosen for her didn't pass the fingertip test. Tony knew that this wasn't the true reason, however. Tony pointed out that Demetra wasn't dressed any differently than any of the other girls at the school. He asked why they weren't being treated the same way. He also wanted to know what exactly the fingertip test was. They had no idea how angry Tony was becoming. The fingertip test, as the school administrator explained, was a standard that all students at the school were expected to adhere to. When Tony made Demetra hold her arms by her side, that's when he saw that her fingertips did not extend past the hem of her shorts, meaning that she passed the fingertip test. That's when the school administrator came up with a different excuse, which made Tony even more livid. Tony insisted that the school administrator admit what he was insinuating about Demetra. When they did, Tony couldn't believe it. He asked that the school administrator repeat what they had just said. As he suspected, the true reason had nothing to do with her clothing, but everything to do with the boys in her class. The moment the school administrator admitted the truth, they regretted what they said. Tony wasn't about to take this situation lying down. What was done to his daughter had nothing to do with her clothing choices at all. It was simply because the boys in her class might see her as a distraction. Then the administrator said that the only way Demetra would be allowed to attend her classes was if Tony fetched her some leggings to cover herself up with. In the 90-degree heat, Demetra and her father couldn't believe the unfairness of it all. Demetra felt like she was being picked on, and her father agreed with her. The school was about to get schooled. Demetra quickly pointed out that the school dress code was never enforced on the boys in their class. She used wearing hats in class as an example. The school forbade wearing hats in class, yet the boys broke this rule all the time. Even were singled out in front of everyone and their parents called. Then her dad decided to weigh in. Keeping this anger at bay, he pointed out that they'd noticed other students while he was in the parking lot who were definitely not following the rules. He said that the girls, and his daughter in particular, were being watched far more than the boys. How could this be fair? Then he raised another important point. On a day this hot, how could the girls wear leggings? He argued that the school's dress code clearly didn't allow for hot weather. Tony felt that some leniency should be given to students when temperatures are that high. Wearing shorter, lighter clothing is a simple issue of being comfortable in the heat. The fact that his daughter couldn't be comfortable due to distracted boys was unacceptable to him, and he wasn't about to simply let it go. Tony decided to get Demetra's friends to voice their opinions on the matter, and they didn't disappoint. Almost every girl he asked felt like the dress code rules were unfair and that the system was flawed. These girls were being made to feel uncomfortable in the summer, all because the boys couldn't control themselves. Tony refused to accept it. The angry dad took to the media with his daughter's dilemma, appearing on Today and a few other local news reports. He had the money and inclination to make himself heard. He voiced his concerns, but his biggest was how the school had made her feel that day. He stated that a girl of her age only wants to be comfortable, nothing more. His daughter had been mortified when she was pulled from class because of what she wore. But would Tony win the fight? When asked what the solution to the school's outdated dress code would be, he proposed that it wasn't up to the teachers to decide what they did and didn't feel was appropriate. He said that the decisions should lie solely with the students' parents. With his opinion gaining traction, Tony decided to go public. He proposed reasonable amendments to the school's dress code, stating that underwear and midriffs could not be visible, and that there should be no shirts with spaghetti straps. But what he didn't know was that he was just scratching the surface of a much bigger issue in society, and not everyone agreed with Tony's stance. While most people were supportive of Tony, saying that he was uncovering the issue of body image and the objectification of girls, some said that if teenagers were allowed to wear what they wanted, the education system would fall into chaos. One dad had caused such a stir that soon everyone was talking about the hot-button topic. It wasn't long before the school decided to respond to Tony's accusations. They stated that the dress code was in place in order to establish guidelines for reasonable decorum. Tony, not backing down, was adamant that the school had completely overreacted to his daughter's clothes. Principal Frazier finally decided to hold a meeting and conceded that some compromises needed to be made. What those changes will be, only time will tell. But Demetra wasn't the only team to shake up the dress code policies in the education sector. As 17-year-old Claire and her boyfriend James Thompson made their way to a homeschool prom, themed Twilight in Paris, they were thrilled for the night ahead of them. They felt good, they looked great, and they were ecstatic to finally unwind with friends. Her boyfriend had even purchased them tickets to the prom way in advance. Nothing, they thought, could take this night away from them. Indeed, she had worked hard to pick out the perfect dress, a glittery silver number that she had found after searching in 6 different stores, eventually finding it at Macy's. She couldn't wait to show off her gorgeous silver and sparkly cocktail dress to all her friends. Little did she realize it was this dress that, for some reason, would push things way too far. But for Claire, this was the perfect dress. After months of saving up her tip money from work, she had finally found something that she loved and could actually afford. But it wouldn't be so easy. Her new dress would need to pass the notorious fingertip length test. So she relaxed her arms at her sides, praying that her dress hem falls below her fingertips. Claire carefully noted that the prom dress code listed on the registration form was simple, which asked girls to keep their dress semi-formal at a fingertip length. And although it was a close call, the dress made the cut. She was confident that this was the perfect dress. Even so, there was just something about this dress that would make everyone lose their minds. I'm all dolled up, channeling my inner Marilyn Monroe with my blonde hair and bright red lipstick, Claire recalled, writing on her sister's blog. But before her big debut, she needed to do just one final test. And unfortunately, this time around, her results came up a bit short. To ensure that she would be complying with the event's rules, she had tested the outfit with heels before going out, but this time the hem of her dress dangled dangerously close to her fingertips. Any exaggerated moves, like dancing for example, would cause it to hike up her thighs, but as long as she moved gracefully, all would be well. And yet, as soon as she showed up to the dance hosted at a local Methodist church, she was confronted. Upon arrival, she was immediately approached by administration. Despite her meticulous preparation, one of the organizers, Ann Duncan, stopped her at the door and said, "Honey, that dress is too short." Unafraid and confident in her elegant outfit, Claire boldly shot back at Mrs. Duncan, "What is the rule?" As Claire expected, she responded, "Fingertip length." Claire went on to explain that the dress simply appeared short on her because she's a tall, curvy girl with long legs. However, Mrs. Duncan informed her that the dress was just inappropriately short and that it failed to comply with the dress code. It would seem Claire would have to fight her way in. But Claire wouldn't budge. After quickly demonstrating that her outfit did indeed pass the fingertip test, the pretty partygoer was begrudgingly allowed access to the ballroom, albeit with a threat. "Well, make sure it stays pulled down. It's too short." Unfortunately for Claire, that was only a warning shot. The real battle had yet to begin. "Indeed," Claire wrote, "when I got into the ballroom, I laughed because I was surrounded by girls in much shorter dresses than me, albeit they were shorter and therefore stood out less in the crowd, but it was still frustrating." Even so, Claire had finally made it inside and was ready to celebrate the special night. A few minutes later, though, Claire and her friends spotted something sinister looming just above their heads. Claire's boyfriend James describes the dance as pretty awkward and heavily chaperoned in comparison to previous years. He said that a lot of people were standing around talking in the center of the dance floor. But the thing that really made things awkward was the line of chaperones and dads looking down on them, gawking from the balcony above. Understandably, Claire and her friends felt deeply uncomfortable. "I felt violated by the sheer number of male parents that were assigned to do nothing for 5 hours other than watch girls in short dresses and heels dance to upbeat music," Claire wrote on her blog post. "I think that it is sick and wrong that they assign them to sit on a balcony above us and look down on us and single us out for our clothes or dancing. Nevertheless, they paid them no attention. They couldn't let that ruin their night, could they?" Sadly, though, their prom was doomed from the very beginning. Shortly afterwards, Mrs. Duncan stormed over to her again. This time, she was clearly on the warpath. Mrs. Duncan beckoned her over and escorted her off the dance floor. She took me into a corner in the hallway with another woman, who I'm assuming was a parent chaperone, and told me that some of the dads who were chaperoning had complained that my dancing was too provocative, and that I was going to cause the young men at the prom to think impure thoughts, Claire wrote in a blog post. "It seems like the dads were the ones thinking impure thoughts. If anyone should be sent home, shouldn't it be the gross dads?" Furthermore, saying her outfit causes impure thoughts isn't much of a stretch from "she asked for it" when people blame victims of sexual assault for what they're wearing. Are the thoughts and actions of young men and their fathers really her responsibility? According to the school, yes. Well, Claire wasn't going to take this lying down. It was time to fight back. Fired up, Claire defended herself and tried to clear up the situation. After making it abundantly clear that she wasn't dancing at all, she once again showed Mrs. Duncan that her dress was the appropriate length, but she just wasn't listening. "I never signed any documentation agreeing to adhere to any sort of dress code, and the dress code that was verbally communicated to me was followed to the letter," Claire said. Her concerned friends tried to intervene in the conversation and testify that they hadn't been dancing, but Mrs. Duncan brushed them off, saying it was none of their business. That's when Claire's boyfriend said enough is enough. Clearly disgusted, he told the administrators, "That's fine, she wasn't doing anything wrong, but if you're kicking her out, then the group that she came with is leaving too, and you'll need to refund all of our tickets." Immediately after, all of them demanded a refund on their $25 tickets, but for Claire, Seeing that a mere $25 refund was hardly enough to cover the trauma she went through, came up with a better idea. After heated yet respectful negotiations failed, James attempted to get the prom's manager involved. At that point, Claire said that Mrs. Duncan became enraged, repeatedly saying, "I will not debate with you about this." So when James continued to press her even further, Mrs. Duncan snapped, calling on a chaperone to finish this once and for all. When Mrs. Duncan got security to escort them off the premises, Claire was heartbroken. The moment she had been waiting years for had devolved into chaos. Visibly upset and with tears rolling down her cheeks, Claire and her group of friends were all thrown out of the prom. "Because I stuck out," she wrote. "I have long legs and I was wearing a sparkly dress. I didn't look like most of the 13 to 15-year-old girls out there. I looked like a woman. I'm so tired of people who abuse their power to make women feel violated and ashamed. I was told that the way I dressed and moved my body was causing men to think inappropriately about me, implying that it is my responsibility to control other people's thoughts and drives," said Claire. It was then and there that Claire hatched her revenge plot. As she was being escorted, crying from the venue, Claire says she asked the security guard what he made of the situation. "I asked the security guy if my dress was compliant with the dress code, and if he had noticed any inappropriateness in my behavior, and he said he didn't think I did anything to get kicked out, but it wasn't his call," Claire wrote. And despite the fact that they were all told they would get refunds for their tickets, Claire was the only one who got her money back. "We walked out of prom frustrated and angry and feeling very disrespected and violated," Claire said. But Claire wouldn't let it end there. She took to the internet to blow the whistle on this injustice, and women the world over heard her message loud and clear. Since the incident, angry people from all over took to the Facebook page of the Richmond Homeschool Prom to express their disgust at the situation, and the administrators deleted all the comments. Now it appears that they have deleted their page altogether. One person, however, is standing up for the decision to kick her out. "The whole situation made me feel violated, walked over, and ostracized," wrote Claire in a blog post. "How is it that what I look like and how I dress constitutes the level of respect you give me?" However, when pressed by CBS News, Mrs. Duncan had another side of the story to tell. She says that the dress may have been the right length when Claire arrived, but that the outfit's spandex fabric caused it to ride up. "It was right below her butt cheeks by the time I saw her," Mrs. Duncan told WTVR. While Mrs. Duncan says she didn't see Claire dance, her comments that the dads were gathered on a balcony staring at her are unlikely. "It was very crowded," Mrs. Duncan said. "There were 500 kids there, so to be able to even say what we were looking at would be really difficult." But Claire is standing behind her blog post and released a scathing video along with her boyfriend to counter Mrs. Duncan. "I was informed by more than one friend who stayed at the prom throughout the course of the evening that there was some truly dirty dancing," Claire retorts, "and that there were several couples making out and grinding on the dance floor. And yet, out of a group of 500 people, only one person, me, got thrown out for inappropriate dancing. I think both parties could have acted a little bit differently, obviously, but the way that it went down, it was fine because people need to follow the rules," Callie Hobbs, a student who went to the dance. She says she saw Claire grinding. Nevertheless, Claire continued to stand up for herself, writing about the prom online and recapping the event of the night on video and in interviews. "When the lady kicked me out, they said the dads had complained about my dancing, and that meant that they had to have been watching me," Claire fired back. The 17-year-old felt that she had been targeted because her body was more mature than those of some of the other girls in the room. "This is a message to girls built like me who can't find jeans that fit," Claire wrote in her blog. "The girls with long legs that are forced to prove that their dresses fit the dress code just because they have more legs showing than most girls." Ever since the story has gone viral, Claire has received an outpouring of support, with readers responding on Facebook, her blog post, and across the media. And yet, neither the Richmond Homeschool Prom nor the individuals who had asked her to leave have ever reached out to Claire to discuss what had happened. "We were verbally promised a full refund for our group. We received only a refund for my ticket. They need to refund 5 more tickets for our group," Claire wrote. Nevertheless, Claire stands by her post and hopes the attention that the incident received has contributed to the examination of dress codes in both her own community and others. The case perfectly illustrates the problems kids and parents face and poses a dangerous question. With teenage girls shopping for the perfect dress, selections bordering on the wildly inappropriate to many parents, are we living in a culture that sexualizes girls at younger and younger ages? And as a parent, what can we do to mitigate this?